Good evening. I want to go ahead and call the Hartsville Trousdale Water Sewer Utility Board meeting to order. We are waiting on someone else to come, and hopefully Ms. Stafford will be here soon. She's on her way. Open the meeting, and if I could ask Mr. Jewell if you will lead us in prayer, please.
Sure. Would you bow with me, please? Heavenly Father, we pause now to give you thanks for this day, for life itself. We're so thankful for the talents and abilities that you've given us. We pray that as we end our lives, that we will have used them all, that they're all used up to the benefit of our community and to your kingdom. Be with us as we deliberate in this meeting, that we make decisive decisions and good decisions for all that are concerned. And that we always look to you for guidance in all the things that we do. We're thankful for each and every home that's represented here. We ask that you be with them as we go forward through life. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
You'll please all stand and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Our next order of business is roll call and determination of a quorum. I believe we have a quorum. We do have Ms. Stafford coming in, and she's the only one that's out, Ms. Maydell. I do want to take this moment and recognize that we are going to move our monthly meeting up 1 week and move it from 5 till 6. It'll still be on Tuesday from here on out. We did get on the calendar. Miss Amy was able to get us on the calendar for that. And that will help some of us who are really pushing it to get here at 5 o'clock. Hopefully we'll get the meeting started at 6. And then also that will allow the water sewer utility board to be right before the county commissioner meeting as well. And that way we'll have our new business prior to theirs as requested. We did get that permission and approved. So we're able to do that from here on out. And that will begin next month. So it'll be the third Tuesday instead of the fourth Tuesday. It'll be the third Tuesday at 6 p.m. We have got an amazing group of individuals that have embraced this water sewer utility board that will be leaving us this year. And one of those has already moved out of the county. And Mr. Todd Weber, who has graciously served as our secretary, has been much appreciated. We asked him to come back this evening so that we could greet him and just properly, formally thank him for the services that he has provided for this county and all those who acquire and utilize the water that this board offers. And Tommy, I'm going to let you take it over. And I'm going to let you start with, obviously, Mr. Todd Weber.
Yeah, Mr. Todd, we appreciate your service, and here's a token of our awesome client. We appreciate your service.
Well, I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.
And and we have two more also. We're going, Mr. Dwight Jewell, if he'd come up here. Well, that's all right. That's all right. Thank Mr. Jewell. He's been a good help, and we appreciate it. And last but not least, our Mayor Stephen Chambers, he's been a very valuable help to me. I've learned a lot from everybody. Every board member here. I learned a lot from every board member here, and I really appreciate the time and what I've learned from you, and learned a lot of stuff myself from each and every one of you guys. It's been a good thing for me. Thank you very much, Shane.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for every ounce of time, dedication, and knowledge that you brought to this board. It's been an asset for all of us. It's been such an honor to serve with you all, and very appreciative to have the time to work with you all. And always know we're just a call away. And Mr. Weber, you're welcome home anytime. So we would love to have you back. With that being said, we will be looking for a secretary. So we will not go there this evening, but we'll talk with that later. So I know you already have one title. You're not taking two. So he's shaking his head. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Chambers. Mr. Jewell. We'll go back to our order of business. We have the approval of our July 2022 meeting minutes. It's in your packet that you've already received. Is anyone have any comments on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a first by Mr. Jewell, a second by Mr. White. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. For our July 2022 meeting minutes have approved. Next order of business is approval for our 2022 financial reports. They are in our packet as well. Lengthy as normal. What is the movement of this board? Or if you have any questions for Mr. Tommy McFarland.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the financial report.
The first by Mr. Chambers.
I second.
Second by Ms. Stafford. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we have an approval for our July 2022 financial reports. Thank you. Next order of business is our water loss report that will need to be, that is in your packet as well. It is going to be presented by Mr. Tommy McFarland.
This month we had about 32%, 32.6%. Last year was 36.1. This last month we found a pretty significant leak on Badgett Lane. It was probably about close to 5 million gallons a month. And it's going underground, never did come top of the ground out into a creek. So we finally got that found and fixed. Then we fixed another leak on Oldham Road, which is kind of tightened that up. Our pumps are running about, getting about a 7-hour break a day where there's running full time. So we got some significant water loss fixed there. And we're still working on got 2 of the master meters still show some low flow. But a lot of those things we found to be service lines. It's 50 gallon a minute or 20 gallon a minute. And after we fix a few services, they go down and then they start over again a little bit. So, but we are finding leaks and we've fixed quite a few just services mostly, but that was a big significant leak that we fixed. And we added another zone meter in that's our 8th zone. And that helped us to narrow down where that one was at. So we did use the technology that we got currently to help find and fix those leaks. So it works very well. And we also we're kind of still waiting on the meters to ship for the plant down here that we're going to be replacing. So that's still on schedule.
Mr. Joe, Director.
The big leak that you found, Tommy, was that in July or was that in this month? When was it reflected in these figures, or will that be reflected in next figures, you think?
I believe it might be over the next month too, Joel. We kind of fixed it in late June, early August, so it may carry. We may see a little bit better next month, I hope.
So you think some of this decrease in July was attributable to that?
It could have been, yes,
Okay.
sir. We're kind of a month behind on some of our data. Your meter read data is a month behind. Some of it is, and some of the stuff that we have to look at. So we're looking at data that's kind of behind us a little bit. So it may come out that we'll see a little bit more, I hope.
So the data here for July is not July?
Yeah, compared to your meter reads and stuff, the zone meters are on their own schedule, but when we look at the data and compare the plant and all this, it's all about a month behind. We're looking at it, so it's not on the same schedule. We read from the 10th to the 10th, and that's how we look at the plant versus our meters, customer meters. It's kind of not all, it doesn't all line up together. We just have to look at it in the windows that we have the data that we can see it in. Because when you look at your billing cycle, it's from the 10th to the 10th, not from the 1st to the 1st. So the water plants from 1st, you got 1 to the 30th on all your data there, but we have to kind of take it and line it up with our meter reads to compare it. Some utilities do their billing and read meters on the 1st of the month. We don't do that, but if we kind of did that, it would probably line us up a little closer to our data, but it still might be a month behind. Our billing's always a month behind. We're always billing people for the last month's usage.
Should you stop? Anyone else have any questions for the water loss report?
I do. I have a question for Tommy. I want to be clear on the data that we're reading for the water loss report. This report, is this reflective June 10th through July the 10th? The report that we're reading tonight, is that what's reflected on this report on the data? June 10th through July the 10th? Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Chambers, you have
I'll just make a motion to accept the water loss report.
for the motion on the floor for the first, Mayor Chambers,
Second.
second, Mr. White. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for the water loss report. Thank you. Next order of business on our agenda is Mr. Evan White with Mid Engineering, and he is going to present our engineering report next.
I'll start with the project updates. It was requested of us last board meeting to give y'all a written update, so I'll give that to every board member. It's just on our letterhead. The garage building is approximately 77% complete. That's based on his pay request that he submitted to us in July, or for the month of July, so could be 80% by now, but real close. They're completing inside touches there as far as painting and getting ready for flooring and things like that. Final electrical and finished plumbing and cabinets and all that'll be coming. We've had to revise the floor in the office. He's gonna build it up 6 inches to accommodate the drive-through window for the women. They felt like they might be a little too short for the height of the standard teller window, so we're gonna fix that. So they'll gain 6 more inches on that. The 20-year master plans in front of you, we'll go over that. On the water side, sewer's about 90% complete. We're still gathering data with Tommy and some of the staff members. Old plans on the plant and things like that. We're still trying to get all that together and go through. SRF tank, the SRF program that we requested the $2.25 million from is now asking y'all to raise y'all's rates. We'll go through that a little bit later in this report. They suggested do that in a form of an ordinance. I know Tommy talked to y'all's attorney and he says the resolution's fine because that's all y'all can pass. So they just got to have it on paper. We just can't say y'all are going to do it and they go along. They got to see proof of it. So, and then the Highway 141 project we're doing with TDOT, the rainbow plans and cost estimates that we've submitted to them. They've approved it, but now they're going through all their environmental field reviews and they're wanting us to do a little bit more stuff to get back to them. So they still haven't give us the go ahead to do any final plans for that. But that's where we're at on projects. Y'all got any questions on the projects before we go on the master plan? All right, seeing none, we'll go into this master plan. I tried to keep it pretty simple. The front's a summary for y'all that's kind of like me and it's not a big English or reading major and just love it. So put all the good stuff up front, and if you want to dig through the nuts and the bolts, it's in here too. But we've done this for 20 years. Basically the summary, the big things are going to be bold that you really need to concentrate on. As far as your water supply, it's adequate, and for what you got going on right now, I know Tommy has got I don't know if the letter's in this board meeting or not, but the letter that you was getting drafted for help on the intake possibly, or
I hadn't included it yet.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's in the works. We're trying to get an idea of y'all's customer base around about you that might be interested in possible treated water from y'all, treated or untreated, however you want to look at it, just what their demands could be that would help us determine the size of the plant. We don't want to build a plant too small. We also don't build one too big. So the letter that Tommy is working on is going to go out to all those customers and try to get some feedback. And we're trying to do it in such a way that you will get feedback. Not that they'll just look at it and put it in trash can. So we're working on that, but the supply is adequate. The intake on the river is capable of doing 5 million gallons a day the way it is right now without the only thing that would have to be upgraded is the pumps, of course. That's minor compared to the whole structure itself. Based on the information that we gathered and the inaccuracies in the flow meters, you're looking at about 10 years, you will need a new water treatment plant. Keep in mind, there's probably at least 2 years worth of upfront stuff, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for it, securing loans, preliminary engineering, things like that. So, and that's before you even get into the design or construction. So typically you're looking about 5 to 6 years if you said go today to get one in operation. So give or take some time there. It appears in 2032 is the target date, and we are suggesting to do a 3 MGD plant. Technically right now you're peaking out about 1.8, 1.7, 1.8, I think is what you're peaking at. And with the growth that's coming, and that's why we're trying to see what other demands you may have. Where our suggestion is a 3 with a capability of 5. And that's easily done. You just build the building big enough to take and handle the extra 2 million. If we keep going through here, I'm on page 2 of the summary, but of course, the immediate recommendations is to go ahead and construct the 2 million gallon water storage tank, because you got 3 tanks that needs to be taken out of operation, and they will need to be, it is our recommendation to have those also properly disposed of. Right now, with the way metal is, it's not too expensive to have those took out of service, considering. We suggest that y'all continue to monitor the zone meters, and the state is trying to get everybody around 20% water loss, and right now y'all are about 35 on average. Even if you got down to 20%, you're only going to save 0.2 MGD. So 200,000 gallons a day is what the best you could do if you got down to 20%. So it's some recovery, but as far as if you get a lot of demand, it would not be enough as far as not doing anything with the plant. Another thing is the plant and the age on the plant and the equipment that's there. So if you was to try to replace some of that stuff, the cost you're going to have to put into a, I don't have the math in front of me, but you're pushing useful life of the plant that's there now without having to do some upgrades. The next portion is adjusting the user water rates to cover the cost of the tank. We'll go in that a little bit more in detail. Of course, that's going to involve SRF requirements. And we done some financial data in here for y'all. Our suggestion when we done put all the math together, all the capital improvement plans that y'all could have over the next 20 years, that's going to be in these appendix that you got in here. A, B, and C's maps of the system. So, the nuts and bolts of this report is going to be in appendix D through G. That's going to be where the numbers are. And we'll go into that a little bit more, but when we've done everything with the new tank, you're looking about a 7.5%. They're about 7.58, 7.53, somewhere in there, percent increase to cover the depreciation and the tank is our suggestion. So our suggestion is to do at least go ahead and do a 10% increase, 10 to 15. That's totally up to the board. That's our suggestion. I don't think there's been one done since 2013. I think Tommy was telling me. So it's definitely needed. It's just the percentage you want to do, and we'll go into the bare minimum you have to do to comply with the SRF grant. But so I'll let y'all read the rest of it. We've pretty much done this before in our PowerPoint, just trying to hit some of the high points in here. If you go over here to the financial section, it's section 9. It's on page 42. I know it's what we're here about. We're all about the numbers. Pay attention to the graph on page 43. I don't know if anybody has seen this graph before, but it's quite shocking. This is the customer price index. And in 2020, it was at 2.4%. It hangs right around 3 to 5% for many, many years. And then all of a sudden in 2022, it's jumped to 18.3%. And that's why everything's costing what it's costing you in the utility world today. So as you can tell, based on history, I cannot tell you what that's going to do with this graph. So I do not think it'll ever, well, I'm not going to say ever. I do not think you'll see it get back down to 5% for quite a while. So it's going to cost you more to build today than it did in 2020. I think that's pretty common knowledge today, but that gives you an idea of how much that has jumped since COVID. We go into your revenues and your debt service and a history and a summary of all your customers. The next page, it was asked that we look at some of y'all's rates. So if you go on page 46, you can see kind of the comparisons. The M1 manual for AWWA, which is the standard for setting rates and doing rate studies, they're not a big fan of looking at your neighboring counties because there's so many different criteria that they may be doing different than y'all. Whether they're buying water from another one and having to supply it, or if they're treating it themselves, how far they're pumping, age of their system. There's all kinds of variables. So they don't like doing that, but it's still a pretty good a way of looking at whether you're in a ballpark or not, I guess you could say, with your neighboring jurisdictions that sell water also. So we give you an inside and outside rate. The bar graph will show you where y'all fall with your competitors. So you're right in line. I mean, you're right up there with everybody else. There's a few that might be a little bit different, but the reason in the ones that's a little bit different is because they're it's the process of them treating water. They can treat it cheaper than y'all can. And their base is not as big, I'm sure. So that'll give you an idea for that. I'm just trying to hit the high points for y'all tonight, since it's about 90 degrees in here. The rate increases over here be section 10, be page 50. We went through and done a user base rate. We've had about a 1.66 factors where y'all are looking at, and that kind of gives you an idea of what the differences would be on the percentages at the bottom. Tommy's done a little bit better job as far as breaking it down where y'all can see the actual dollar figures. This is just giving you an idea of where you would be on a bill too, graphically. We'll go into that, but what I do want to discuss is the SRF requested that it be about 1.4 something. So me and Tommy said 1.5 minimum. So but you're going to have to do a 1.5% increase no matter what in order to continue with the tank at 2.25 million. You still have that option for 1.75. Your rates did work at 1.75 million, but our recommendation is you need to ask for the additional money due to that customer price index. And when we started this tank, what we estimated the tank to be is not what it's going to be when we finally get to build it. So that's where we're at there. If y'all would go to Appendix F, this is going to kind of tell you how we come about your O&M cost and why we're suggesting why we are suggesting y'all do a 10% rate increase. Over here is your next 20 years of projected cost or projected expenses. And as you go down through here, you'll see the tank and the interest that has to be paid and the depreciation. You also see line items in here that says water line extensions. And that's going to be the water lines on customers that's on unserved roads in Trousdale County y'all asked us to look at. So we've included those lines in there. And this figure will, if you look back at the feasibility study, the figure you see here will correlate with that figure that was in that report. And we took the lines in order from highest ranking to lowest ranking. So you do have water line extensions in here. You also have O&M for your tanks. That's in your tank report. I think it's section 5 or 6 of the master plan, you can look at that, but we suggest that y'all go ahead and start complying with the inspections that's been done on the tanks. There's some of them that require very little work, and there's some that will require painting and sandblasting and OSHA requirements and things. So that is also included in here. We've also added costs for water booster stations. I think me and Tommy went through it, and we think there's probably 2 that would need to be replaced for sure. So we're just trying to add everything that we could think of, equipment wise or tanks or operational wise that you would need replaced. And of course, the tank comes in here at 2032. The plant comes in here at 2032. And that's where you get a big jump on your curve. I'm trying to find that page so you can see that. It's on page 41. So 41 is just a graph of your expenses over the next 20 years. And you can tell that the year mark 2032, it makes about a million and something dollar jump. And that's because of the trying to pay for the plant. So and section G is just y'all's 2022 financials that was unaudited. So we try to base all of our studies on y'all's audited financials, but we included 2022 in here. And that's also when we observed the inaccuracies with the flow meters at the plant. So a lot of that data kind of got threw out, and we're staying with the 2021 data. But I'll take questions, try to explain to y'all what all's in here. There's plenty of time for us to come back and go over this. This is just so y'all can take it home and look at it. Like I said, the summary tells you everything that's real important. Without reading through here, we tried to summarize it. But the rate increases is, I guess, something nobody wants to do. But as you can tell, if you're going to do any projects and keep the system operating the next 20 years, you've got to do something. And it's better to do it in small steps than large, huge steps, and wait as long as possible to do that. So that's our recommendations. And I'll take questions. I think Tommy had a question. Or I mean, not Tommy, Dwight, I think.
You're recognized.
On this proposed 10%, is that 10% across the board in minimum bills, use rates? Is that include the miscellaneous things like tap fees and things of that nature? Or is this strictly on the water rates?
It's just water rates. It's straight across the board. If you'd like us to, you have to really dig down. It takes lots of hours getting into that M1 study. You can look at your customer base. We try to give you that ratio factor there. Your residential meters versus commercial versus industrial versus wholesale. Your wholesale
It's minimal.
is not, it's a minimum flow. So if you lost your wholesale, that's a lot of jurisdictions, I guess you could say bread and butter. You know, a lot of times they sell a lot to their neighboring. So they really try to watch that rate so they don't lose that income, but it's insignificant. We're still keeping it relatively in line with everybody else. I think it'd be $3.99 if you done a 10%. Right now you're at $3.63 per thousand. But yes, it's across the board.
Okay.
10%. That's on minimums and that's on per thousand.
Okay, in looking at it, I guess the thing that I've always been concerned with the disparity between rural and urban as far as the difference in rate. At a 10% rate hike, you're talking about $1.60 more on the urban, and you're talking $2.79, $2.80 roughly on people in the county. When you do percentages, the higher gets higher and lower doesn't get as high, I guess. And looking at the comparison with similar in area, other, districts, looks like there's not as large a gap between the two with any of them, with the exception of possibly Lafayette. And I know some of them don't make water and they're just a wholesaler and they really don't have two different districts. So their rate is the same, I guess you'd say, kind of like, Bethpage.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
You're talking about
but it
graph.
just seems, we're almost, this will bring us to the rural will be paying twice as much as city. Now, I know city's also gonna have sewer tacked on top of that, so they're probably, their total bill is gonna be almost the same for the same amount of usage. I just wondered if that's something that we need to look at, increasing one a little bit less or a little bit more than the others to try to bring those two in line, I guess is, what my question is.
Yes.
If we're gonna adjust the rates, if we want to do something like that, seems like now would be the best time to try to tackle that.
Yeah, he's talking about the graph on page 51. If y'all want to turn to it. That's where we compared outside rate versus inside rate factors. The state of Tennessee is on an average of 1.5 times. And y'all are sitting at 1.66. Lafayette is at a 2.0. Lebanon's at a 1.5, Gallatin's at a 1.5. Everybody else is less than that. So, but we compared that to everybody. The way you come about that, there's lots of studies on this with that M1 manual. You have to justify why you have that factor. And a lot of it has to do with getting it there. So y'all have got a lot of unfavorable terrain. And that's the same way in Lafayette. That's why Lafayette's is 2.0. So you've got more pump stations than a lot of these people. You've got more tanks. You've got to pump it further. So that's how you come with, that's the reason for the factor. And the state don't care as long as you can justify the means for your factor that's there. But like I said, everybody, 1.5 is what they'd like, but they are not going to deem you as long as your study proves that it takes it to get it to the
I guess what
customer.
I'm trying to get at, if we go with a straight 10%, then that percentage is not gonna stay at 1.6.
Yes, it will.
It's gonna escalate even more.
No, it'll be the exact same factor because you're doing 10% across the board. So you still got the same.
Well, the
factor.
difference between the urban rate when the other one's going up more, I'd say it may affect that. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at my math wrong, but just wondered if that's something that we needed to try to factor in or wanted to look at while we're trying to adjust these things. I'm all on board that we're going to have to adjust them. That's not what I'm arguing against. I'm just saying, does it need to be 10% or does it need to be 8% on the county and 11% on the city, or to try to bring that gap a little bit closer together?
You also got to remember your customer base. Y'all probably got more in the county than you do in the city. And that's why they go to an equivalent meter ratio. And I don't have that in here. That's something that gets in depth. We have to really start pulling meter data. We have to get a 60-40. And then you got to figure out how many gallons on average they're using in the city versus how many gallons on average they're using. I'm telling you, it's lots of numbers to go through to do a full in-depth. But that's the justification if you want to go through all that to figure it out. But you gotta start taking averages because maybe the cities don't use as much as the counties. You got to do that. So you got to get two ratios is what you come up with. You're trying to compare apples and apples. I mean, that's what it boils
But I
down to.
guess if you had a $10 water bill in the city and you went up 10%, you're gonna pay 11, that's $1. If you're paying 25 out in the county and you went up 10%, that's 2.5. Theirs went up 150% more than the city did as far as the total dollars they're having to pay. for the exact same amount of water. So that's just, it's hard for me to explain that to people, why there's that much disparity. They
So-
understand some, but they seem that's this almost twice as much seems, it's just hard to, you from an engineer standpoint understand it and can explain it, but from us as water board members trying to explain it to the public why there's that much difference is really difficult.
So you're looking more towards a fixed rate increase. So
I think it would be more,
dollar.
yeah, we're going
The
to
same dollar
$3 on everybody's water bill.
Yes.
I think that's easier and more palatable for people to understand and to accept than a percentage. Now, maybe the percentage is fair. I don't know, but I'm just saying you get into those kind of things. It's kind of like giving a 10% raise, and the guy that needs the raise the most don't get as much as the man at the top of the food chain that don't need it. Okay,
But
so I just, percentages, what do we have to justify? If we were starting from scratch, if we were starting from zero on water rates, if we had no water rates, would we be at this much difference? If we said threw everything out the window and said, let's see what we need to charge for water in the city and in the county, would we be at these water rates, or would they be closer together? Is that an unfair question? Probably.
No,
But you see what my point, what I'm trying
correct.
to get at.
The difference is your tanks and your pumps,
Okay.
pretty much. I mean, and what it costs you to pump that water. So you got electricity.
My understanding of what he's trying to say is the further out you go, it's more hydraulically challenging to get that water to people, so it costs you more money to get it to them. That's what he's, as an engineer, is trying to say to you. That's how it always was. In Tracy City, we had when we did our developers agreement, the engineer broke down, like if somebody built on the east side of town where the water lines wasn't big enough and all this, that their cost was going to be greater to get what, if they wanted to develop, their costs were greater. It would cost more. They would have to pay more to get water that way. And in a system like that, the further you go, you have to have a pump put to that tank. It costs more money to do that. And that's the mindset of what he's trying to say, why it's a little bit more out.
Well,
And I'm not saying you can't fix it. I'm just saying that's the reasoning.
I absolutely understand that. I get that. I know that's the justification. I'm just trying to look at the difference, the disparity. If 60% of your customers are in the county, 60% of your customers are paying twice as much for water than the 40% that are in town. So the total income for your water utility district is more like 80-20 than 60-40, and the dollars coming in is where it comes from. Am I?
But that 40% also pays an extra property tax bill for urban services, which we're told we get extra things for. I've yet to have any of those things identified. I understand what people are saying, but at the end of the day, compare your water bill rates to your electric bill rates. I think your water, even with a 20% increase, is still going to be
A bargain.
a better deal than anything else you're getting.
I'm not arguing against an increase. I'm trying to grasp my head around the disparity in the two rates. That's all. I think it's a big gap between what 60% of the people pay for their water and what 40% pay for their water. I would like to see that a little closer. I know it's always going to be more, but that just seems like a lot more. And when I look at this data on these inside, outside rates in these 10 districts that we have the biggest gap of anybody other than Lafayette. Most of them are a lot closer together in those two rate structures. That's what prompted me to ask this question or to go here. And that may be a question that needs to be answered at another day and another time with some better documentation. But I know that we're going to need the increase. I am not arguing against the increase. The increase is long overdue. Should have done it before now, probably. But in the face of the escalating costs with inflation and what you've so eloquently shown us here, that's a given in my mind. But just wondered if we needed to try to bring those two a little closer together. That's all.
My suggestion would be not to go below 1.5. So you're talking about 166, by 1.5. So 1.5 divided by 1. So it'd just be 90% of that.
So we currently have 1663 for 2,000 minimum in the city and a 1% increase, or let's just say 2%. Take it to 2%.
A 10% would raise your,
To 1696. But I would like to go back to your conversation of the 10%, sir. So with the minimum of 2,000, the normal rate is 1663. And to go up to 10% is only 1829.
Right.
Minimum rule is 2794. But to go up 10% is 3073. So it's not double.
no, it's that 167 factor. It's always going to be that
Yeah.
factor. That's what I was saying.
So, and 10% gets this department a head start on this 20-year plan for the progress that needs to go forward. And he has a recommendation, and it's up to this board of how far into this 20-year plan would we like to go at this time, which would be the first increase since 2013. I understand that it does take more labor, more pump stations and tanks to get the water to the rural areas. And I understand that it takes less labor and less pump stations and tanks to get it to the city.
I'm certainly not opposed to 10%. I question whether that's enough.
And you can see, if you want to look on page 52, there's a graph there that shows you 1.5 times your inside and what the bill would be right now if you went that route.
Okay.
And that'd be your difference in inside and out with a 1.5 instead of a 1.66. So. And don't hold me to it, but I think it's for 3,800 gallons. I don't have all the figures in front of me, but 3,800 gallons is what y'all's average user uses per month.
If you look in your packet, Tommy did include a graph for us. It's a chart. I'm sorry, not a graph. Looks like this. So you can eyeball yourself and see what the differences are on 1 to 10%. It's right before the regulations in your packet. So if you'll all take a moment and look at that. I want to make sure everybody's eyes are on that before any and then if you have any questions or concerns.
Tommy, do you remember how long it has been since we had any increase at all?
Yes, sir. I seen the minutes of a meeting in 2013. They raised them 20% in 2013. And that's the last known rate increase we've had.
Well, if it was
You
twenty
can think about-
percent 9 years ago, and then we're talking about 10% now, I think we as a board need to adopt a specific time each year to review our rates, look at them. People are gonna swallow 1 or 2% a year, a whole lot better than they're gonna swallow 10 or 20%, you know, even if it's 10 years apart. It's just a big number. You hit them in the face. You're still talking about water bills less than $50 a month. It's still relatively cheap. But
Yeah.
right now, everybody's getting kicked in the teeth every time they turn around. It's not going to be received well, no matter how we frame it. But I just think we can do a better job if we are more proactive managing it on a year-to-year basis. Maybe come look at it in June, May, before budget time. I don't know, but I think it's something we need to look at on a regular basis. Not just for the customer's sake, but for our sake too, like looking at our tap rates. I mean, we looked at those and it looked like we were losing money on them. I mean, no, you can't sustain any business if you're losing money every time you do something. So we definitely need to look at all of it on a regular basis. And I feel like that's got to be part of our core reason for being here.
In 9 years. 9 years, you might as well say 10 years. That's about 1% a year. And certainly, that's why I said I question whether 10% is actually enough. But you know, we're gonna get beat up at 10%. We might as well get beat up at 15%. You know,
20.
quite, I hated to say that, but I just.
10% will take care of your 2 million gallon tank and your maintenance on the tanks that you've got to do also. It was 7.5% to take care of the depreciation and the note on the 2 million gallon tank. So that was the minimum there. Of course, that don't take effect until the tank comes into operation, which, you know, you got some time there, but they at least want 1.5% for your 2.25 million just to get the loan. So we said 10 to 15%. I mean, somewhere in there, it's going to give you the money to do the projects that y'all need to do. And you got to remember this 10% is not going towards those unserved areas on the lines. Now, what could go there is what y'all have in reserves coming in on a yearly basis. So, because that's not part of this right here.
And I'm
We're
glad you
not
said
adding
that.
on top of it. So,
Well, I'm glad you said that because there might have been a misinterpretation that some may have thought that that included getting those unserviced lines with just the 10%. So that the 10% does not include the service lines, the unserviced lines to be serviceable.
This may not be popular and I'm sure it won't be, but I feel like the 10% increase is just getting us by. That's just my opinion. I think that it should be a little bit more. So the unserviced lines, we can think about that and be ahead of it instead of falling behind. Probably an unpopular opinion, but that's my opinion.
As my brother would like to say, what we got here is a mess. Yeah, I'll say the quiet part out loud. If 10% is just gonna service his tank, then we definitely have got to be considering beyond that. Probably get my house burned down for this one, but if we had to go 20%, if we can somehow figure out 10% covers the tank, let's take another 10%. How far could we extrapolate out how many lines would that put down? An extra 10%. Because people gonna be mad about the water bill going up, but if you can at least put some kind of positive spin on it, and they ain't gonna care nothing about a new tank, because in their world, that don't mean nothing. Is that feasible? Is that something that we could do, is calculate what another 10% would bring us? And how far we could stretch that for new lines for underserved areas?
Your 10%, what is the first initial 10%? What figure will that take it to in this report?
The 10% would cover, you gotta look at 7.53% is just going to the 2 million gallon tank. So you're only looking at 2.5% going elsewhere. And when you do that times your, what y'all bring in, I can't do the math on top of my head, but you're not talking about a whole, there's not a whole lot there. 7.5% is only bringing you in $186,000, if that gives you an idea, because
That's the question I was, yes.
and that's what the interest and principal payment is, plus the depreciation is on that tank.
That's not a line. That is not enough to put a line down a road.
That is correct, because most of those lines was $100,000 per road. I think. I don't have it in front of me. Does that sound right? I don't have the feasibility in front of me, but
I thought it was way
Yeah,
more than that.
I'm looking at the feasibility study and the only line under 100,000, the first one on Darrell Lane, 35,000. Everything after that's 126, 125, 112, 103, 110, 196, 330, 273. So
yeah, we was looking about 100,000 a year. So 10 years to do 10 lines. But that is not included in your 10%. We're just trying to take care of the immediate needs we're not trying to cover the next 20 years on the people all of a sudden. Usually it's done annually. So a lot of places look at their rates annually with their capital improvement plans, which is what y'all have got now.
Yes, sir.
I would like to see us fall somewhere between 10 and 20. Once you hit 20, that sounds exorbitant. 12 doesn't sound any worse than 10. 15 doesn't sound much worse than 10. If that makes sense, if it will carry us a little further out and let us do a little bit more. At 3.5% additional at 13.5, that would still make your base rate jump from $18.29 to still under $19, still $18 and change at 13.5. So those percentages, small amounts on the bill, the dollars seem smaller and the pennies seem smaller than the percentages sound, is my point. Where we go with this, I'm kind of on the way out the door. I'm not going, but I will support what the majority of the board feels like we need to do.
What's the wishes on the ratio? Do y'all want to see figures with 1.5 with the state average and with y'all's ratio to see what the difference would be there? Or-
I would feel more comfortable if we could, instead of get away from that 1.65 or whatever it is, down to 1.5 for that difference. To me, that's justifiable, explainable, that's the norm across the state. And that way we're not exceeding that. It may skew the numbers a little bit, like I say, one might have a little bit more of a percentage or a little less than a percentage to be able to accomplish that. But it gets back to the question of fairness and being able to justify it and explain it in my mind.
We don't have to do this. Y'all don't have to do a rate increase today. They're waiting on that before they would go any further with the SRF tank. So that's the only thing that's, I guess you could say, time sensitive, if it is time sensitive. We waited this long, so.
Is it possible for us to do the minimum, do the 10% at this point to be looked at to possibly more going forward, so that you at least have that in place to meet their needs? Or is that going to get too complicated on y'all, Tommy, trying to keep up with it?
If we do a study in between, I'm gonna recommend in between the audit and in between the budget for the department, where we attempt to get off of the 1.66 after the 10% increase for next year's evaluate, as of next year's working orders for the evaluation on an annual basis.
So what you're saying is go with the 10% now, try to adjust that 1.5 at a later increase, later in the year or before budget time next year, whatever.
I'd say next year.
Get an audit, and we'll get an audit of what dollar figures of what it's running to get it out there. I think we do a thorough, instead of just put that kind of crunch on Tommy and Marydale right now. So
I like that idea if it's not an accounting nightmare for them to change it again.
And there's no stipulation saying you can't change your 1.5 down. It may lower some of them's bill and it may raise somebody else's in next year's, if y'all look at the evaluation on that. They just got to know that your rates today will cover that tank, which is 1.5% on their calculations. But they're not looking at all the other stuff you got going on, which that's why we're saying it's going to take 7.5. It doesn't matter to me if we come back next month. It may bother y'all on the tank, but I mean,
You'll
we
have
can get
something
more
else.
data, so.
So we're talking 10% city, county and wholesale. And that ain't gonna mess us up wholesale. I say we do it then.
No. We are raising it. No, there's no problem raising it, is what I meant. No, I meant there's no problem raising it. Yeah, that's what I thought you said. There's no problem raising it, no.
If you lost all of them, you're only losing $18,000.
For this SRF, how long are they going to wait before they get tired of waiting?
Well, the catch-22 here is your rate ain't locked in, so that 220, whatever they put on there, it's in my report, 225, 226, 227. That could be 235 time you get the rates and get them satisfied. So that's the only catch in waiting, is if interest goes up or goes down. So
I'll take any help with that audit for the outside. So
Y'all just want to get more data and do it next month? Or is that what you're saying?
No, sir. I'm saying I'd like for them to help me after we make, I'd love to find out what this board has, what movement they'd like to make tonight.
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear you. My little thing here is not loud enough and I can't get it up, so.
I was saying that I would, I'd like for us to make a movement on this tonight. And then also I would like for any help possible with the study going forward for annual audits on our rates. So that we do not burden the customers with this size jump every 10 years. It might be a little less gradual is my recommendation, or find out. So,
Yeah, I would recommend you look at it and with Mr. Jules talking about justifying what's the difference between the county rate versus what people still think of the city rate. I think if you could kind of go back and look at, okay, you've got your pumps and your tanks and all this stuff. What are your expenditures for that area? Taking out the sewage treatment or the water treatment plant, because both of you are going to pay for the water treatment plant. But what are the number of boosters and stuff inside what would be now the urban services or old city versus what it is for those 60% outside? And if you look at it and go, okay, it cost us 1.7 times more than it does. I mean, I just think that's where you're going to see your justification. Just and they're looking at it going, well, these numbers are different. Okay. And you say, well, it's different because of these things, but what is the cost of that? I remember in that the study they did on our I&I issues when it was almost 60%. Well, that cost was like $150 something thousand in electricity and everything like that. So I just wonder what's the difference there in your cost in the rural versus your city. I think looking at that every year going forward as part of your study to what your rates are going to be, I think that'd be a really good idea. And then include that in, what are your expenditures going forward versus, taking into account inflation and all that stuff, labor costs going up. And then that'll lead you to what you're looking at as far as a water rate increase. And it does need to be every year, because I think sitting here 9 years and all of a sudden then jumping up like leapfrog every once in a while, I think that's probably not the way to do it. It needs to be done built in, because we sit here and had 9 years of inflation going into all these numbers with no increases. And now we're riding on the razor's edge trying to get this loan. And we're having to look at a huge jump because we didn't look at it before. But that's just my thoughts on it, but I ain't gonna be here, so what does it matter? I would be hesitant. I am hesitant about sitting here and waiting another month on this SRF loan when it's already been how long? Year and a half, 2 years?
2019, I think is when we put in for it.
So what do you need from us?
is that a motion? He said 12%.
I make the motion that we would increase 12% to cover these immediate costs. And look at the difference in the 1.6, 1.5. And that will give us a little cushion if we have increased costs because of interest rates or cost of construction. So.
We have a first on the floor. Do we have a second? And that's at 12%.
I'll second.
Mr. Jewell with a first, and we have Mr. White with a second. All in favor, say aye.
I
We have,
have a question.
yes, Mayor Chambers.
I think we need to determine when is going to be the effective date of that. I think in the past, we had talked about trying to set it
Yes, sir.
30 days out. Are we looking, do we have I know the billing, when does as far as keeping track of the meter readings, when does that end in a month? So if you're going to sit here and my bill's due on the 10th, but you send it to me before then. So what day of the month does the meter reading stop for that billing?
It's 10th to 10, so every 10th we read, so that's your bill for the following month.
So September tenth or October tenth would work for you all?
I would be more in favor of October tenth. That gives people a little bit of time. September tenth is pretty soon.
That's fine with us.
And then that
Part of
gives
the
us-
project, for them, it doesn't, as long as y'all voted in, the time is to SRF probably is not as important, but
The first,
as long as you voted in, that's okay for them.
As long as it's before it's actually built. So. Yes, technically.
so is that would you like to alter your motion?
The bill, whatever month go, the bills will go out on the 24th. And it'll be the first of the month will be the effective when the customer gets that bill. So after we run bills and process everything, we send bills out on the 24th, which come out on the 1st. So as long as it comes out on the 1st, we'll set that rate accordingly, whatever month y'all set it at. Does that make sense? Does that answer your questions?
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to get to where the new rate kicks in at the beginning of a billing period, billing cycle, instead of being halfway.
When do y'all read the meters, end it out to decide what somebody owes you? The first, the end of the month, the 10th, the 20th, when is it? Okay,
Go out on the 1st, so they get their bill on the 1st. On the 1st is when they'll see that bill.
so what,
10th,
what are we saying? I'm
the
confused.
10th, when it's red,
Yeah.
is safe.
See, that's how that works is you read the 10th, that gives people 10 days grace period to pay their bill. We bill on the 21st after we do shut offs, which was today, we did shut offs. So we'll process our bills tomorrow, which will go out the 1st. So that's the 1st of the month is when any new rate would take effect.
Okay,
Of any period that y'all choose. If it's January the 1st, it'd be January 1st. Was when that rate will take effect.
But if the rate is effective on the first day of the month and you read them on the 10th and you calculate it, part of it is in the old rate, part of it's in the new rate.
No, it's not how it works.
Whatever rate we put in at the time of the billing.
Whatever rate is in at the time of the billings, what'll get charged. There'll be no partial rate this month, partial rate that month.
So what? The 10th is when we need to make this effective.
Yeah, that would be at the beginning of the.
So that way, if you do it the 10th, then everything prior to the 10th was on the old one and everything after the 10th was the new one, correct? Okay. 12% increase effective October 10th.
I have a first on the floor of October 10th, 12% increase. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. White's made a second for the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll bring the additional data next month.
Can I get a police escort home, please?
Our next order of business is actually, thank you, Evan. I know that was huge. And I know you've been working for a long time on that 20-year plan. Our next order of business is our general manager report. And with the approval of general wastewater regulations, Tommy, I'll let you have the floor.
We gave this out last month and I guess hopefully y'all had a little time to look at them. It's just something we've been working on if y'all had any more questions or after reviewing it, we'll open it up to that. if y'all, if the board had any more questions. There's not a whole lot that's changed in it other than the few things y'all have already kind of weighed on in the past board meetings. Some of those things made it into this new document. A lot of it's required language by TDEC and state code. But the things that were in blue and red were some of the things that were changed, if y'all had a chance to look at them.
Madam Chair, I have a question. If
You
I
have the
could.
floor, sir.
Looking through here, Tommy, it keeps mentioning, I see places where it mentions in the city. Well, technically Travis County doesn't have city anymore. We've got urban services and general services. So I would suggest anywhere that it talks about limiting to the city, that it says urban services instead of city.
Yeah, we can make that adjustment. It's a simple fix, sir. That can be changed.
I hate to sound like if anybody else got another question, I'll let them go and then we can come back to me, Madam Chair, or if nobody else does, I'll go. It looks like.
Go ahead.
I guess back to me then. I was looking here where it talked about every 5 years of doing I guess an evaluation on a septic tank. Would that be throughout our service area, that even in I guess out in the rural areas, that every 5 years you would have to drain down the tank and look at it again?
I think that was for people that may be on a septic tank currently. It would, if that tank fails, it would put them in a position to have to go on the sanitary sewer system. But if they go through a process of, and most places they do kind of require that you pump your septic tank down every so many years anyway to clean it, after 3 to 5 years. I guess that's why they set that period of time, one of the reasons. But if that fails, the state would force them to go on to the sewer system anyway, is what my understanding, because they won't re-permit that tank if it fails an inspection.
But the sewer requirement would only be if you have sewer, like where I live out.
Yeah, only where sanitary sewer is available. Yeah. And where the force mains are, that's not required, but it to be hooked up to, so that doesn't affect those. That rule's in here as well. So sanitary sewer is only gravity sewer, is y'all's definition. So anywhere in town basically is where that counts for in the urban service area. Yeah.
This would apply also. We've had some homes that have had a chronic problem with sewer system, their septic system, chronically leaking out, and supposedly fix it. And then we go back and it's there again. I think this would kind of address those type of issues. Would it not, Tommy?
Yes, sir, it would. Yes, it would.
Madam Chair, I have another question. It's kind of just related to this thing. It's just another part of the language here. It says where property is subdivided and buildings use a common sewer, a common building sewer is now located on separate properties. The building sewers must be separated within 60 days. I know this was in existing ordinances under the town of Hartsville. So is it, if we make the effective date on this, let's say September 1st, is it going to be enforced within 60 days of this going effective regulations, even though I know this was the ordinances to begin with?
Do you know what section that is, Mayor? Because I not recall that right off.
Yes, sir. Give me just a second. That is on. It's section 106. Should be 3C. and it should be kind of around the last sentence of that one. But I mean, that whole, the 60-day thing kind of is effective for that whole paragraph, but where I'm talking about is the last sentence of that section's subsection C.
I would think of, some like one of the complaints like one of the complaints we recently had. Where there's three on, that's the dead end of a sewer system, so there's no way to fix them. I think they would kind of be grandfathered into that because there's nowhere to bring them back to without building more sewer system. Is that what kind of where you're headed with that?
I just saw that and it says where a
Yeah.
property is subdivided and buildings use a common building sewer is now located on separate properties. So I guess at one time it was all one property and they shared a sewer, and then it was subdivided. Now they're on separate properties. It says the building sewers must be separated within 60 days.
Okay.
So I guess in that scenario where I know we've got that line where there's three on there,
Yeah,
the way I'm reading this is, I guess at the time it was subdivided, they should have been on separate sewer within 60 days. So I'm just wanting, I know, again, that this was an existing ordinance and there's been some confusion about it, enforcing ordinances and everything. And so is this going to be now enforced where we had that scenario going forward? And is it going to be 60 days within effective date of these regulations, or?
that's what, if it's existing, I like I say, there's probably some instances where it exists. If it goes into play, we will have to enforce them unless y'all want to, if there's some reason to allow some other reason not to, but a lot of these probably have not, there's going to be instances where we don't know about them or something's plumb that you're not aware of. We run into that problem when we get problems. Sometimes that's how we figure out some of them, when people make complaints or we realize somebody's more than one person's hooked to a service line and all that. That happens. We've had that happen. I think that would affect these people in my mind, this rule here. But to physically say, to make that happen, it may be difficult if they're on the dead end of a line. And that's all that's accessible to that area. Does that make sense? Without building something new or adding on to something or extending the public sewer out somehow. That could be a unique situation. Is that similar to what we're talking? Am I getting confused with something else, Mayor? What do you think?
No, I think that, again, just reading this, it says where property is subdivided and buildings use a common sewer. It says is now located on separate properties. I think we could take out is. And it says, just say now located on separate properties, the building sewers must be separated within 60 days. So to me, like I said earlier, that looks like if you had, it was one piece of property, let's say you had three buildings on one piece of property. And they each had there was one line and they had three different feeds off of one line. But then it was subdivided and now it's actually three separate pieces of property. This seemed to me that you're going to require each of those properties to now get their own separate line coming in within 60 days.
Yeah, that would be correct then, Mayor. Because in instances where people on the water side, if somebody divides a lot out and they divide this one specific area and that meter for that property is now on that one specific division, that meter stays with that property. Them other people no longer have water service that owns the next two lots. So they would have to get service another way. We don't let them stay on there and they have to divide on the water side in that instance. It would probably be the same thing here. Yeah.
How many days do they have to have the water changed over when you purchase land?
Well, if we would work with them. I don't know if we have a set time frame, but they'd have to purchase a meter and install a line. You can ask that again if you don't mind.
how many days until a new owner of property has to have the water line in their name after the sale of property?
It just depends on when they want service or to move into the facility.
I was just apologizing to Mr. White for being so into the details, but unfortunately, that's what my training is to do, so.
Yeah, on that, each situation is when they come in to decide to start service. It's up to the customer that just bought the property. And we have had people who have done this and they bought subdivided and they found out later, I don't have a water meter anymore.
Madam Chair, I am going to go ahead and make one motion on this, and that motion is going to be in these proposed regulations, anywhere where it says in the city, that be changed to in the urban services district. Because that way it'll comply with the charter and the other services districts we have, and I think that'll be easier to enforce than just saying in the city, which hasn't existed in 21 years.
That's the first motion on the floor. And with the alteration of everything that says city is urban services, anything that is rural is general services. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't seen anywhere that it specifically says, other than at the beginning where it separates out and says rural area. I just seen the places where it says in the city. And I think some of that's because these used to be city ordinances. So I would just, my motion is just where it says in the city that change be changed to urban services. But I do see that if it does somewhere else, say in the county, that should probably say in general services. So I would amend my motion to anywhere that in the regulations where it says in the city, that should read in the urban services district. And anywhere that says in the county, that should read in the general services district. And I think that'll bring it in line with language that we have in the charter and other documents.
And so your motion is to approve?
Well, it's not to approve it, it's just go ahead and make those changes. Because I think you need to get your changes and then approve it as amended. So I just want to amend that language.
So we have the amendment. We have the motion for the amendment to make the changes for in the city to be urban services, and anything that's written rural will be general services. We have a first on the floor with Mayor Chambers and a second, Mr. Jewell. All in favor, say aye, please. Any opposed? Motion carries on that. Thank you. Now we can bring back to the conversation of the ordinance, I'm sorry, on the regulations itself. For those to be updated, as you see either in red ink.
Madam Chair, I do have another amendment. And this is a very small one. That subsection C that we've been talking about for is that subdividing properties and doing that. I want to read that last sentence again, and then I'll tell you what my change is. It says, where property is subdivided and buildings use a common building sewer is now located on separate properties. I motion to remove the word is, because to me that makes it a little bit, it doesn't read well. I think if it said where properties is subdivided and buildings use a common building sewer now located on separate properties, the building sewers must be separated within 60 days. I think removing the word is makes it flow better, and it just is a little bit more easy to comprehend.
Yes, sir.
So my motion is to remove the word is in section 6, subsection 3C in the last paragraph, in between the word sewer and now.
We have a first on the floor with Mayor Chambers. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. White, we have a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, I have another question. I hate to keep dragging this out, but and let me see where the beginning of it is. It will be on I'm sorry, give me just a second. I think it is still in that section 106. Should now be subsection H1. Which should be the next page after that section we were just talking about. It mentions a pre-treatment coordinator. Do we have a pre-treatment coordinator?
Yeah, it'll be me or Penny. Yeah, it'll be the wastewater plant operator or me.
That's covered in the definitions, Mayor, in item 44. Pre-treatment coordinator is the person designated by local administrative officer or his authorized representative to supervise the operation of the pre-treatment program. It's in the definitions.
And since those kind of decisions on pre-treatment could affect the wastewater treatment facility, it will probably end up being whomever is the chief operator of the wastewater treatment plant. Because they're the ones that have to make sure that wastewater treatment plant is not affected in any ill way. So that would be my thoughts on who that will be.
Well, I was just asking because during the compensation study where we did new job descriptions, I don't remember anybody ever having that designation or that job description. And I just wondered if we already had one. And
The way the definition reads, it's whoever he appoints to do those duties. It's not necessarily a separate job or position, just part of their duties. If I'm reading the definition correctly, that's the way I would look at it.
well, I'm not arguing the fact that it can't be somebody appointed. I'm just saying that in the job description, I don't remember anybody's job already having a description in there that said retreatment coordinator. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I just want to know if we already had somebody designated.
That would, like I say, as far as mine, that will be the wastewater treatment plant chief operator. Because they have the interest of keeping everything straight at the wastewater facility and make sure it runs right.
Well, I would suggest that maybe you draft something on letterhead, specifically designate that person as pre-treatment coordinator. That way in the future, if anybody like me that has a law degree wants to come in and argue something, we've got something in writing showing that.
Yeah, we can do that. Is post that's their responsibility. It's probably the best person for it. They won't have to do a whole lot because we're requiring the people that require that. They're the ones that have to have people to do it. They just oversee and make sure they do it right.
Anyone else? Anybody have anything else? I had 4 things, but they're taken care of now. Thank you, sir.
I'm done, so I don't have anything else to add.
Well, you got my 4 is what I was saying, so. So what is the decision of this body?
Shouldn't we bring it back after all the language changes next month?
If y'all want that, or if you want to accept it with these changes made and or whatever, however y'all please to do it.
I'd prefer to just bring it back after the changes have been made. I'd be more comfortable with it. No offense to anybody, just me.
No movement for lack of motion, I take it. So. All right. So we will bring this back next month after the corrections and alterations have been made and the amendments. Thank you. Our next order of business is is still on the manager's report, please.
In your packet, y'all saw a little, some information from, Servline. They relooked at after 3 years, they relooked at our claims that we've had on water loss for our customers. And they've re-rated they call it re-rating. They've lowered that rate down from $3.20 to, I think it was, $2.57. Yes, on residential. Now in another period of time, they'll look at the sewer on a separate time frame of 3 years and they'll reevaluate it when that time comes. But the water rate, we've had it longer than the sewer, so it come time to be reevaluated. And that'll go into effect if they wanted, I guess, y'all to see that and approve it, to accept it. So they'll go through an advertisement phase of sending out flyers, and it'll probably go into effect in the next couple of months. But this is part of the process.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are the limits the same? This is saying limit 2,500. I was thinking the limit on the other was 10,000. Is this just on the water part of it, but not the repair?
Yes, it's just the leak adjustment. It's not the line insurance.
Is that a separate charge for it?
Yeah, that goes directly to customers. We do pass it through here, but that's a direct thing to customers. We only do the water loss side is what they looked at. For the water losses, the water leak adjustment.
If you recall, the proposal is in your packet. I don't know.
I think it would have been helpful to have what it was and what it's going to instead of just what it's going to.
Yeah, I didn't have what it was. It was $3.20. Is what customers have been paying on a monthly basis, and it will drop down to the $2.57. Did that answer the question?
So is the water sewer combined rates, is that dropping as well?
No, that was an optional rate, which we don't have. They had that in here. And the reason that I don't think we should have that is because only 1,100 customers are on sewer and everybody else is water. So they would have that rate's for everybody. That $3.80 is for everybody. So it's cheaper to just keep everybody on an individual, the water and the sewer separate. Because the sewer is $235, I believe. Ain't that right, Mary Day? It's just $235 a month for the sewer side of the leak adjustment. Right now. In other words, a water customer will pay this and a sewer customer will pay this, and not everybody's got sewer. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir. It makes sense. I mean, they're going down on their rates. I mean, do we even have to approve it? I mean, we've approved doing it. And their rates are their rates, I guess.
Being a contract, I would think.
I just think they wanted y'all to acknowledge that they've lowered them is all. I don't think it has to be just to be reported to y'all. If y'all wouldn't mind making a motion to accept it, just in case that is what they would wanted, I think that is what they
Make a
want.
motion to accept this proposal from them on the new rates.
For the first on the floor, Mr. Jewell, for the proposal for Servline, it's for the new rates.
Second.
Second with Mayor Chambers. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to approve the Servline water leak insurance rewrite. Mr. McFarland, is there anything else you have for your manager's report?
No, that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you all. Is anybody, we do not have any public comment. We don't have any, the public is left, so board comments. Does anyone have anything? Thank you all. I'll repeat again, Mr. Jewell, Mayor, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And if I can get a
Motion to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn. We have a first and second, and let's go home. Have a great one.